With us right now is Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, joining us out of Tel Aviv. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, we do have a significant audio delay, so I apologize for that. But first off, Benjamin Netanyahu, the present Prime Minister, has said the goal here is the elimination of Hamas. Do you agree with that goal?
Look, probably elimination is too hyperbole word, but we exactly determined to make sure that Hamas will be paralyzed and all his operational capabilities will be taken from him to the last rocket launcher or lab or weapon system or individual who participated in this terrible kind of barbarian murderous attack. And we are determined to make sure that this kind of event can never happen, and Hamas as a military terrorist organization will be totally, fully paralyzed.
You know, Prime Minister, are you surprised or disheartened by some, not all, sir, of the global reaction, the United Nations warning that any Israeli activity to clear out, Gaza, it will be a human tragedy and Israel shouldn't try it? We've heard from a lot of countries in the Middle East themselves, including countries presumably friendly to you prior to all of this, from Egypt to the United Arab Emirates to even Saudi Arabia, saying that this was of Israel's making. What do you make of that?
I don't listen to anything that you've said for any place. You know, after this attack, which was the most severe blow that we suffered since the establishment of the State of Israel, to murder 1,300 Israelis with terrible, you know, some people were decapitated, babies were slaughtered, whole families. And it's a really barbarian, it's a Daesh-like, or you call it ISIS-like, Al-Qaeda-like operation. And the Americans crossed half of the globe in order to put an end to the phenomena of Al-Qaeda or Daesh. And we are going to do the same, just few yards beyond our borders, with these guys who executed this brutal attack. So it's probably, you know, we would be happy if it could be accomplished from the air. It probably cannot be accomplished from the air, so we have to go on the ground and make sure that it happens. And of course, we are totally committed to the international law. So we have to warn them with enough time. So we already issued warnings that whoever have any Hamas activity of whatever nature, or housing some munitions or having an office, whoever has any such activity within his residential place or working place, have to move out of this place, because every such place is a target. And we warn the population, please make sure you leave the area. We cannot assure a full completion. And so probably inevitably there will be certain collateral damage, and people are already killed there. But, you know, it's a whole difference. They sent the terrorists deliberately to slaughter innocent civilian people. We are hitting them back, and only those who would not leave the place in spite of our repeated warnings, might risking their lives.
You know, I was thinking, Prime Minister, ahead of your coming here, the significant role you've played trying to broker peace for your country. You were elected in May 1999. You were the Labour Party leader at the time. You defeated, at the time, Benjamin Netanyahu in that race for Prime Minister. The next year, you were at Camp David meeting with Yasser Arafat, along with Bill Clinton, to hammer out an accord that would form a lasting peace. Like that, much like the Camp David Accords before that with Jimmy Carter, Israel and Palestinians have had a devil of a time doing just that. Now, Hamas has complicated things at a minimum. I get that. But do you get frustrated with a process that is unending, and war and violence that is unending, no matter your aggressive peace efforts and those of prime ministers before and after you?
we are now focused on the war. We first have to win the war. We suffered an unprecedented blow, but we are a defiant species. We know how to unite when we face a real threat, and now we are focused on kind of completing what I have just described. And we will win. Even if there are certain constraints on the operation. One constraint is the hostages, another constraint is the to whom you might pass the torch of controlling Gaza, even if we spend the next several weeks in cleaning every spot of Hamas activities or presence. We don't intend to stay there for 20 years, so we have to pass it to some other. That's the second constraint. Third constraint is the possibility that it will spread to the Hezbollah in Lebanon, probably some dormant cells of Hamas and Jihad in the West Bank, probably even some Shiite militias backed by Iran in the Syrian side of on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. All of them might join. We have to take it into account. We are not interested in the intervention, but probably they will do it on their initiative, or probably the situation will just deteriorate through the exchange of activities. So, even with this wider situation, which we have to take into account, it can happen. I can promise you, there is no existential threat to the state of Israel. It might take more toil and sweat and tear and blood, but we will win this war. That's what's important. Now, I never lost my eye contact with the fact that at the end of the road, we should have a certain kind of arrangement with the Palestinians, separating. I am great believer in two-state solution. But that's not the time for it. There is dispute about it in Israel, and Netanyahu, they mentioned, think the opposite. I think that he's wrong, but it doesn't matter right now. We are now focused on destroying the Hamas, and we will do it.
All right, so when you say destroying Hamas, that echoes what the Prime Minister has said now, that is the goal. So by that, I assume whatever happens in Gaza after this attack, and you make things right, and you hope that things, they're eradicated. Hamas should have no role then in the Gaza, right? I mean, would that be important to handing over to whomever does get that control? No connections to Hamas at all.
Look, Neil, there is an utopian wish. I don't know if it's realistic. I tried it 15 years ago in 2008, just around one of the wider operations in Gaza. There is, at least hypothetically, possibility that once Israel take over the Hamas, the whole world demand that Israel will withdraw, will say, okay, we are ready to pass the torch to anyone else. Let's think of multinational Arab force, including Egyptians, Saudis, Emiratis, Moroccans, the Bahrainis, whatever. They take the whole area and make it quiet for, let's say, 6 months, avoiding Hamas to come. And within this limited period of 6 months, to convince the Palestinian Authority to take back the role. They are the formal representatives of the Palestinian people. Basically, Hamas took the power from them in a very violent coup d'etat, some 15 years ago or more. So that's... In the past, I tried to do it, but it failed. No one of them was ready to take it. Probably after 15 years, we are in different situation. I cannot tell you whether it can fly. But it means that Israel intend to eliminate the presence of Hamas from the negotiating table and paralyze it or take it from any potential capability. We cannot control the dreams of people. We cannot control the ideology. We cannot take from them the wishes. But we can make sure that they don't have the tools to execute any action against us, and we are determined to do just that.
Prime Minister, I do appreciate your time here, but I did want to get your take on these Egyptian reports that they did give Israeli authorities, I don't know who exactly, sir, a heads up about not the details of this Hamas attack, but that something was being planned. We've heard nothing more on that, and you're quite right to say the focus right now has to be dealing with that and investigating all of this later. But do you know anything, we're a defense minister as well, how this slipped through what is arguably one of the most incredible intelligence forces on the planet?
First of all, I don't know the answer for your question. I can hardly see a reason why the Egyptians should invent or provoke such a claim without having any factual basis. But I cannot tell you that I know. From my experience in previous major events, look on 9/11, or look on our surprise, being caught surprise in '73, or even you can sail backward to the book of Roberta Wollstetter on Pearl Harbor. You will find in retrospect that there were many hints that something is going to happen, and because of certain block thinking, certain inertia, certain routines, they were not interpreted as converging to an operation. That's a major failure of our intelligence. We have to correct it. We do not deny it in any way. But I should tell you honestly that there were along the last 10 months, probably 10 times, probably more, that the highest authorities of our intelligence, our head of intelligence, our commander of the armed forces, minister of defense, demanded once and again from Netanyahu, look, what you call judicial reform and other calls judicial coup d'etat, the consequences of this, together with the overall situation in the Middle East, which are extremely sensitive, they create imminent and apparent risk to our security. And I quote this word, and they demanded to gather the cabinet, the body of responsibility. In Israel, there is no commander-in-chief. The prime minister is not commander-in-chief. He governs through a collective body called the government, which has an inner cabinet. Netanyahu was never ready to do that. And at a certain point, it was kind of apparent that there is no genuine reason. For example, 2 months ago, there was voting in the Knesset about what's called the unreasonableness clause, part of this regime reform or coup d'etat, doesn't matter now. And the chief of staff demanded to gather the government to explain the implications of this. It was 3 months ago, and he was rejected. And then at the day of the voting, the head of intelligence, the head of operations, the J2 and J3 of our chief of staff, of joint staff, came to Jerusalem, tried to meet with ministers, members of Knesset. They met 2 out of the 64. Now, what was the reason? There was a simple reason. Netanyahu understood that if these members of the cabinet and the Knesset will hear from the chief of staff, from the minister of defense, from the head of intelligence, which is equivalent to the CIA, NSA, and all others, the situation, they might not vote for his judicial reform. So that's I cannot even, I don't want to dive into it when we are at war. But there is, in spite of the operational failure of the intelligence to give concrete kind of warning about this coming, the whole situation, the fact that we are in a very subtle situation about the Hamas, Hezbollah, Iranians and so on, was clear, apparent, written on the wall, and rejected as a subject for a discussion. That's very bad, but it should be put on the shelf now. Once we win, right, we'll have to make sure that we learn on the lesson that everyone is accountable for his responsibility.
Prime Minister, you're quite right. The time for investigations and looking into how this all transpired. There'll be time for that, as there was in this country after 9/11. But I appreciate your time in the meantime, Prime Minister. Be well, be safe.
Thank you, Neil.
Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.